Good afternoon. Welcome to the Intelligence Forum's Who Are You podcast series. And today we're very privileged to have Zoe Russell, the co-founder and chief operating officer of Rethink Carbon. Zoe, good afternoon. Welcome.
Thanks, Harry.
So the first thing I'd like to ask you, Zoe, is in which part of the country, or was it another country that you started life and grew up in?
I was brought up on the west coast of Scotland, about 30 miles west of Glasgow on the River Clyde.
I would think that anywhere after that was a disappointment, wasn't it? I think it's a very beautiful part of the world.
It is really nice, yes. I had a lovely view from the house, sort of 180 degrees of mountains and river. But I now live in Aviemore in the Cairngorms, so I have a really good view, just no water.
Oh, now on another basis, when did you first become interested in land management and protecting endangered species?
I think since I was wee, I've always been really interested in nature and animals. And when I went to university to do my first degree, that was in zoology. So that just sort of increased my interest in different animals, especially birds. And then I went on to do a PhD on red grouse, which took me to the Highlands, and I spent 3 years roaming the mountains following red grouse about. And from then had an interest in moorland management and moved on to working for what is Scotland's nature agency. So it was called Scottish Natural Heritage then, now Nature Scot, where I worked with land managers and protected species for most of my job.
And when you say your first degree, where did you study zoology?
That was the University of Glasgow.
Okay, and presumably growing up, you were witness to so much in the way of bird life, if you like, all sorts of birds of prey, and I suppose now you look out of your window and see all sorts of interesting things. Do you find yourself doing that?
I do, yes. I've got a bird list on my fridge. Birds I have seen from my kitchen window, which is quite long. So we get ospreys flying over in the summer, which is quite nice. And but when I was younger, I wasn't. I don't suppose I really focused that much on it. It was more the birds came more when I went to university, and I was surrounded by people who like bird watching and went out with them. Prior to that, I mean, I like being outside and in nature, but I wasn't really so focused on it when I was younger.
Have you noticed? I mean, this is a bit off piece, but I can't resist asking the question. Have you noticed that many changes due to the change in climate in wildlife and in particular birds?
Yeah, I think there are fewer garden birds than there were before in different species, so more magpies and corvids, like crows and jackdaws, rather than, small songbirds. Um, I keep a note of every year of when the first swallow arrives in the Highlands or the IC, and that changes. And when birds start nesting, I think has become well, it's a bit messed up, really. There isn't such a strong pattern as there used to be.
And on that, going to shift topic slightly. You're co-founder of a business. So how did that happen? How did you find you've arrived at where you are today? What was the passage?
Yeah, I think I'm still asking myself that how I ended up here. I when I was working for Scottish Natural Heritage, I ended up project managing software development projects uh, to manage environmental data. So still sort of nature and environment, but sort of progressing into technology. And I ended up meeting my now partner and also co-founder while I was working there. He's been building software for about 30 years. And so I left that job and started working with him in his software company. That was about 2018. He's very much the sort of techie builds things, and I'm the organizer, holds everything together. And so Rethink Carbon came about when in 2021 we saw a Scottish Government accelerator programme. It's called CivTech, which is all about connecting up public sector organisations and innovative technology companies to solve challenges in the public sector. And they come up with a challenge that we thought suited our skill set really well, which was how can we help people who manage land to make more informed decisions and store more carbon and tackle climate change. And with my partner's technological knowledge and my environmental knowledge, we thought, oh, that's one for us. So we went for it, we got onto the accelerator, and we've just gone forward from there to create Rethink Carbon as a company and build our software platform for land managers.
That's pretty impressive stuff. And I'd also like to say it's interesting how there's that collaboration between the private sector and the public sector, and that's clearly worked well for you.
It has, yeah, and it's been quite interesting for me coming from a public sector job to then being in a private sector company and seeing the public sector from the other side has been really, really interesting.
I mean, without being political, because we're not remotely political, we don't swing in any direction on that one. But what would your observations be? I mean, give me the positive.
I think for us, we're such a small company. There's only 5 of us. We can make decisions really quickly.
Yeah,
is probably the main benefit. Whereas public sector is slow moving. There's a lot of parts and a lot of decision makers. Whereas we can decide to do something and implement it within a week. So that's probably the main positive for us. But from previously working with building software for private sector clients, there's actually not a lot of difference because even when you get into big corporate organizations, whether they're public or private, you find all the same hurdles.
I guess one of the we call it a problem. Do we call it a problem? I'm not sure that's the right word. One of the hurdles to cross, which is universal, whether you're in any small business, is that when you're working in a large organization like the public sector, if the tech doesn't work, you press 321 on the dial and somebody appears and fixes it. Whereas that may not be the case in when there's 5 of you.
Yeah, that's correct. We have to fix everything. And I think with such a small team, everyone does sort of play a full part in being able to do, wear multiple hats. So we can all do a little bit of everything.
So the differences you're making in society, in life, how would you, if I'm standing there, at a drinks party and I say, well, what differences are you making? How would you assess that? How would you, because you are.
Yeah. I mean, in a practical sense, we're helping people that manage land make better decisions. So, and ultimately, so that they can have more sustainable and resilient businesses. So it's not all about nature and environment trumps everything. People who manage land still need to have viable businesses. So it's about helping them to see what the opportunities and options are for doing that and making them more sustainable going forward into the future. And I think a lot of that comes down to technology. So being in a position where we can enable that process through technology is hopefully making a difference or going to make a difference.
And I guess you're one step ahead of regulation all the way. New regulation on sustainability and climate and environment. That's one of the advantages that you'll have, I guess.
I think we have to make sure everything's up to date in our software platform. So yes, it's just keeping an eye on what's changing and automating as much of that as possible. So if something gets updated, whether it's a regulation or a data set, that we can automate that so it comes into our platform. Because we have to make sure the information in there is accurate and up to date.
So what would you say you really love about what you do?
Ooh. I really like the flexibility we've got to make decisions and do work that we want to do rather than having to work for someone else and follow what they want to do. I think that's probably the best bit.
So you recently went to the USA, I think, to look at getting investment. what was your experience on that? I don't mean how good was the hotel. I mean, what was the experience of the investment arena in the in that mighty center of capital, the USA?
Yeah, well, we were lucky enough to have two trips to San Francisco or Silicon Valley in the summer this year, and it was very much about making contacts and networking to see what can happen, what the potential is down the line. So not strictly just asking for money, but just the whole atmosphere is completely different to what you experience in the UK, where you tend to find people can be quite negative about, oh, that'll never work. Whereas in the US, it's all great. How can we help? And who can we put you in contact with to make that journey easier? So everyone's really supportive and enthusiastic. And as well as that, the amounts of funding and investment they talk about are many more times the figures that go about in the UK. So just really interesting to see, and to be based in a city where, like San Francisco, where all the advertising and billboards you see are all for AI and big software companies, and it's like a different planet. It's amazing.
Well, obviously it worked, else you wouldn't have gone twice. So, well, I just want to thank you very much indeed for this podcast today. And thank you so much for actually speaking not so long ago. It's deeply appreciated. Zoe Russell, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Harry. It's been lovely to talk to you.